The common explanation for why INFJs worry is that they care too deeply. That empathy, pattern recognition, and the constant awareness of what lies beneath every surface in every room naturally produce a mind that cannot rest. And that explanation is not entirely wrong, but watch what it misses, because there is a specific kind of suffering that arrives when an INFJ tries to stop worrying and cannot. A specific quality to the silence that will not come, and the explanation you have been given does not account for it. Welcome to power and myth. There is a moment most INFJs know well. You are lying awake at 2 a.m, not because anything has gone wrong, but because your mind is doing something you cannot quite name. It is not grief. It is not fear exactly. It is a kind of vigilance, a scanning, as though somewhere in the dark of the future something is waiting to go wrong if you are not watching for it carefully enough. You run through conversations. You trace potential outcomes. You construct elaborate architectures of what might happen, what might need to be said, what might go unseen if you allow yourself to relax for a moment. And in the morning, exhausted, you tell yourself it is because you care too much, because you are wired differently, because the same introverted intuition that lets you see further than most people also means you cannot switch it off. The nigh-dominant mind, the explanation goes, processes information constantly. It reads beneath surfaces because that is its function. So naturally it worries because it can see the iceberg beneath every interaction, the tension beneath every smile, the ending of every relationship 3 chapters before it arrives. This explanation has been given to you in various forms: sensitivity, empathy, introversion, the absorbed quality of the INFJ nervous system. And there is genuine truth in each of them. The INFJ does process more. The INFJ does carry more. The emotional antennae are tuned to frequencies that most people genuinely do not hear. If someone tells you the worry is simply the price of deep perception, they are not lying to you. They are offering you the best explanation they have. But here is precisely where that explanation begins to break down. If worry were simply the natural product of deep perception, then the moments when INFJs stop worrying would produce chaos. The careful watching would stop, the vigilance would lower, and things would go wrong precisely because they were no longer being monitored. That is the implicit contract the worry offers. I am what keeps things from falling apart. Without me, you are exposed. And yet every INFJ, if they are honest, knows that the opposite is true. The decisions that turned out to be right were not made at 2 a.m. in a state of grinding vigilance. They arrived in stillness. The words that needed to be said came not from rehearsal, but from the moment when the rehearsal was finally abandoned. The creative work that landed, the connection that deepened, the choice that altered the direction of a life. None of it came from the watching. It came from the stopping. So if worry is not actually protecting the INFJ from the things they fear, what is it doing? Jung drew a precise distinction between the ego and the self. The ego is the part of the psyche that believes it is the whole story. It experiences itself as central, as responsible, as the mechanism that holds everything together. And when the ego is insufficiently integrated, when the gap between what it claims to manage and what it can actually control becomes too wide, it does the only thing an overextended ego knows how to do. It worries. Worry, in Jungian terms, is not a character trait. It is the ego's strategy for maintaining the illusion of control over what the unconscious is already handling without it. The INFJ's nigh-dominant mind is processing continuously at depths the ego cannot reach or supervise. The unconscious is working on problems the conscious mind cannot solve. And the ego, sensing this vast activity beneath it, yet unable to participate, generates anxiety as a substitute for competence. The worry feels like engagement. It is actually displacement. This is the point where the surface explanation completely collapses. The INFJ does not worry because they perceive too much. The INFJ worries because the perceiving part of them, the deep, ancient, pattern-completing intelligence of NI at full operation, works below the level of conscious control. And the ego, excluded from the process, mistakes its own exclusion for danger. What you feel at 2 in the morning is not your intuition working. It is your ego panicking, because your intuition is working without it. There is a shadow dimension here that also needs to be named, because it runs beneath the anxiety in a way that is rarely acknowledged. The chronic worry of the INFJ is not always about external outcomes. At its deepest layer, it is frequently about identity. Who will I be seen to be when this goes wrong? Not, will this fail? But will I be known as someone who failed? The worry is not prediction. It is the shadow of the persona scanning the horizon for threats to the image rather than to the person. Jung understood the persona as a necessary layer of interface between the individual and the world. We all need it. But when the INFJ confuses the persona with the self, when the vigilance about how they are perceived becomes indistinguishable from genuine concern about their own life, the psyche cannot rest, because there is no rest available to a self that does not know where it ends and the performance begins. Every threat to the image registers as a threat to existence, and so the watching never stops, because the thing being watched for is everywhere. The real question this opens is not, how do I stop worrying? That is the ego asking how to perform calm, which is merely another version of the same problem. The real question is, what would remain if the worry were removed? Who would the INFJ be without the surveillance? This question frightens some people. It should not, because what Jung discovered, and what every serious tradition of interiority has discovered independently, is that the answer to that question is not emptiness. The answer is clarity. What the Seer archetype understands, at its most integrated, is that vision and vigilance are not the same thing. The Seer does not see by straining. The Seer sees because they have become still enough to let the seeing happen. The Cassandra pattern, the ancient curse of knowing and not being believed, does not arise from too much perception. It arises from perception under the wrong kind of pressure, from the seer forced into the ego's register, compelled to perform knowing rather than receive it. The tragedy of Cassandra is not that she saw too much. It is that she was made to carry her sight in a state of permanent urgency. When the INFJ stops worrying, they are not switching off their perception. They are restoring it to its natural condition. The nigh-dominant mind does not need to be pushed. It needs space. The decisions that arrive in genuine stillness are no less informed than those made at 2 in the morning. They are more informed, because they have access to the layer of processing that worry permanently interrupts. The ego's noise is not a signal. It is static laid over the frequency that the unconscious has been trying to transmit. This is not a prescription. It is a description of what is already true of you. The anxiety you have been carrying as evidence of how deeply you care is, in its chronic form, a kind of theft. It is the ego consuming the hours and the energy that belong to the deeper intelligence you were born with. The seer does not become less perceptive when they stop worrying. They become what they have always been but could not fully access through the static. The pattern completes. The knowing arrives. The right words come not because they were rehearsed, but because there was finally silence enough to hear them. There is a moment the seer learns to trust. Not the vigilance, not the surveillance, the stillness. The knowledge that what needs to be known will arrive when the ego is quiet enough to stop mistaking its own noise for the signal that was there all along. That moment is available to you. It always has been. You have felt it before, in the rare hours when the watching stopped, and something moved through you cleanly. You called it luck or coincidence, or a good day. It was neither. It was you operating as you were built to operate. It had a name long before you found this channel. If something in this video shifted the way you understand the quiet that has been trying to reach you, please tell me in the comments. The Power and Myth community is here for exactly this, naming what has been living beneath the noise. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper. Until next time, find your power Know your myth.